Welcome to Weekend Hangover. Laura here, broadcasting live from Columbus, Ohio. Levi, Levi, are you familiar with the Rate Your Room Twitter thing where they rate people's Zoom rooms?
No, but if I were to rate my room, I don't think I'd get negative points with this backdrop, but I wouldn't get positive points
It's not, I
either.
mean, mine is not good either because books are lame, but I mean, it's at least a little more
Yeah, yours
interesting.
aren't yours aren't even following the new hip trend of book organization by color,
Oh, I know. That
because they'll
looks like
make like
madness to me.
yeah,
Also, Archie is in the studio. He's prepared to offer his opinion. Our hope is that this will be the happiest hangover we've ever had
if you've
because
ever
it's
had
about
one.
happiness, right? I've always kind of liked the idea of the weekend hangover, not just for the people on stage, the people with the microphones, but what the hangover is for everybody who's a part of the day. It was a big day yesterday. It was Father's Day.
Mm,
It was Food Truck Day. It was the penultimate in the Christicism Atheism series. That's a lot of excitement for people to handle. What do you hope people? It's Monday. What do you hope hung over for them from being
yeah,
with us this weekend?
yeah. I hope that people will understand that happiness comes from who, not from what. I think that we spend a lot of our journey confused by that, and then for many of us, it's too late. When you're on your deathbed, you don't ask to see your watch or your stamp collection, or honey, can you wheel me out to see my car one last time? You ask to talk to people, and so ultimately, a life with others is a happy life.
Yeah, I think I told you already what I loved about the weekend is that growing up in Christian culture, there was a sense that happiness was something bad,
Mm-hmm.
or that if it wasn't bad, it was something less than joy. That it was
Mm,
always contrasted, that like happiness is fleeting, it's momentary, and that joy is permanent, it's unconditional. And so the happiness was something less than joy. So I thought it
mm-hmm.
might be worth us just spending a few minutes hanging out there. Like, what's that
Yeah,
difference between happiness and joy? What do you think? What's
yeah,
your first
yeah.
thoughts?
Oh, I would have loved to. If I had more time, I would have loved to get through to talk about that, because there is a nuance between happiness and joy. And you know, a lot of people are under the impression that, like you said, like joy is almost more holy,
Yeah.
but they're both, I think, holy. They're both designed for us. But I think joy is less circumstantial, and that doesn't make it cheaper. It's just different.
Yeah. My first thought, and I'm not committed to this idea. I'll have to like wake up tomorrow and see if it lasted. But my first thought today, when I was thinking about it, is that maybe the analogy works that happiness is like the books and that joy is the library. that
Hmm.
that like a moment of happiness kind of it sits on the shelf, right? And you build
Yeah,
up and you build a library of moments so that when things
yeah.
are hard, you can call on that feeling.
Right. Yeah. So Joan Chittiser, who you and I were talking about a little bit before, who you informed me she's a nun.
Yeah, she's a great nun.
Yeah, she
One of the best.
explains that human happiness is kind of like a physical organ, almost, that has to be nourished. And I could see how over time, like Dallas Willard, he says that joy is a pervasive sense of well-being, and the more life that you experience, hopefully I'm going to use your library analogy, you're cataloging,
Right.
and you're showing, oh, that's when God was good then. That's when God was good then. That's when God was good then. And then before you know it, you've collected this library of God really does desire that pervasive sense of well being for us, infused with all these collections of his goodness. And then your life isn't reduced to the book, it's the whole library. I love that picture.
I think it works too. Again, I'm not totally committed to it, but I think one reason it works too is that happiness can look so different in so many people. There's so many different things and there's so many different ways we can experience happiness, but joy does feel like something that is like a collective thing we all kind of understand, where happiness can kind of take all kinds of forms, and we can feed up that happiness shelf
Hmm.
all kinds of different ways. what do you? I wanted us to talk about one of the things that's been making me happy lately, and we'll get to like what's making us happy. But one of the things that has been making me happy lately is for our City Lights team. We've been doing this thing called Cups and Questions. And we have a coffee version and a beer version. We do it a couple times a month. And the idea of it is just we sit around on a porch and I write like 6 or 7 questions, and then people get to just talk about what they think we don't leave with any answers. We just all leave feeling like we got heard, and just talking about stuff. And we met this last Thursday, and one of the questions was who's flying the UFOs? And that led to a pretty good, happy conversation about who might be flying the UFOs. But one of the questions was actually very on topic. And it came from, I've been collecting prompts and things for these kind of things for years. And so I don't know, this one came from Hugh Laurie, who played Dr. House. But years ago.
Who was always hungover.
Yeah, and never happy.
Never happy.
So he tweeted, I think his human persona as Hugh Laurie might be slightly happier, but he posted this tweet several years ago that said, a man lives in a cave. He's never met another soul. He's blissfully happy until he has a sudden peaceful death. Is this a good life? And then we just kind of talked around the room about that. But I wondered what your response to that would be. So here's a guy. The premise, he's been in a cave. He's never met another person. He feels happy. He dies a peaceful death. Is that a good life?
That for me evokes some pretty strong opinions, actually.
Yeah.
So on the more humorous and maybe culturally relevant side, if you were to watch Castaway and he's never reunited with humanity, would it be a good movie?
Yeah.
Because for me, that would not be a good movie.
Yeah. Our family went to see Castaway on Christmas thinking it was like Tom Hanks and the beach ball. Like, so how
it is kind of Christmassy, right? Because
it was released on Christmas, but it's such a downer of a movie. So it's like, wah, wah. But I think the difference of Castaway is that he knows what he's missing. So he knows that Helen Hunt is back home. He knows he's missing people.
If this takes place in a vacuum, you're saying, well, I'm probably too affected by some theological ideas that make it difficult for me to think about it any other way. But, when you start thinking about the Trinity and then God creating humanity, it came from this desire of sharing what God was enjoying with the Trinity. And so humanity is an invitation to enjoy and to kind of have, like, I think Richard Rohr calls it the circle dance. Like everybody is together having a good time. And so it's almost like impossible for me. If that's why we exist, then to exist without each other doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, most of us felt like you did. Like that premise is almost impossible to imagine that somebody could be happy just in a cave.
It sounds like a person who's been hurt by so many people that their ideal is to never be hurt again.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because there's times where I think, oh, I could be happy. And then this quarantine year happened where, like, even me, who's like a very deep introvert, I found myself, like, anytime I had any interaction with other people being like, please tell me how your day was. like I wanted so badly to connect with other people in a way that even I could not have really imagined until this last year. I hope that's one of the lasting effects of this year, just realizing how intertwined we are and like how much our happiness and joy are both.
Yeah. This is one of the quotes that I wanted to share from Henry Nouwen that I didn't get to. And it goes like this. It says, we often live as if our happiness depends on having, but I don't know anyone who's really happy because of what he or she has. True joy and happiness, inner peace, comes from the giving of ourselves to others. A happy life is a life for others. And that was one of those, like, oh, that's really well said, but it didn't make it in. So there's a little hangover for you.
It's on the B side.
Yeah.
I love that too, because I've been working with this, or just in my own head, I've been working with this definition of spiritual formation that I love so much, which is I think it's even come up on Weekend Hangover, the idea of like, my life's mission is to become like Jesus, but for the sake of others. that
Mm.
if it is just for my sake, there's a
Mhm.
certain sort of like self-care,
Yeah.
happiness, there's a certain kind of satisfaction or fulfillment. But when I add that piece that it's for the sake of others, it makes how I plan the year or how I spend the week, it makes it a totally different
Mm.
list.
Yeah.
So I love that idea that it has to be for other people to really be meaningful, even if it is something we do by ourselves. Like, but we see
Right.
it as for the sake of
Mm.
community. I think is important.
Yeah. I heard somebody talking cynically about people posting. I think it was on a Simon Sinek podcast. People posting um, uh, something on Instagram about how great their dad is and a picture of them with their dad, but their dad doesn't even have Instagram.
Yeah,
So who are you doing it for? But it's really to, it seems like maybe self-serving and like I'm virtue signaling,
yeah,
but the motive could also be, I want to share in my experience as someone who, enjoyed their father, and
yeah,
that's all that it is for. But
yeah.
yeah.
You know how Facebook like shows you your memories? I've been like clicking on those more lately.
Mm.
And I guess several years ago, my Father's Day Facebook post was a picture of my dad reading the newspaper. And the caption I wrote was, "Here's my dad looking for his tribute." He doesn't understand that it's on Facebook.
That's awesome.
And that is a good joke that I made in the past that I felt like needed to be
That's
repeated.
really what like a Father's Day card is.
That's right. Yeah.
Analog.
Yeah. One year, speaking of Father's Day cards, and I should mention if anybody has any happiness questions or responses, we'd love to hear them. I see we do have some people hanging out in the comments. So if you have anything to throw at us, throw it at us.
Mm.
But I remember one year I just couldn't find a card that like said what I wanted it to say to my dad. And so I bought a card in Spanish. And then I wrote like a translation that was not faithful to the
No.
original language. But, I just find like when you're doing the card search, it's like nothing really captures
Mm-mm.
those relationships.
Right.
Um,
So you went
so
rogue.
yeah, I did. I was just like, oh, let's give him a Spanish card.
Yeah.
So uh, I want us to talk a little bit like it's summertime. Summertime is synonymous for some people with happiness.
Yeah.
And also people are going on vacations. And I think sometimes on vacation is when we get like this little taste of happiness or like what our life could be. And then we come home like Michael Scott did in The Office, and we try to like remember when he tries to keep Jamaica going?
Yeah.
He
He's
buys a
got like
steel
steel
drum. Yeah,
drums.
he's got
Uh,
like one little braided thing.
that's when they
Uh,
find the picture of Jan.
yeah, really falls apart. It
Yeah, it
really falls
does.
apart. But I think a lot of us do that. We go away somewhere and we feel so much happier. And I wonder if we could just talk about that. Like, is that just because we're not at work?
Hmm.
Or is there something else about summer, like the summer rhythm or
Yeah.
vacation, that's something we should try to hold on
Hmm.
to for the sake of
I,
happiness and
it
joy?
just triggered for me I was reading The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, and there's this chapter where they talk about the human experience of firsts and how a family could go to Disney World and it have 90% terrible experiences. Ice cream cones falling out of kids' hands on sidewalks, waiting in long lines with intense humidity and heat, and all of these different things that stack up. But then when you get home, 2 weeks elapse and your friends ask you how Disney World was, and you say, "Oh my gosh, it was amazing." It's total bliss.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to me how the human mind works in categorizing happiness or not happiness.
Yeah. Of course, by this point, people expect me to quote a Wendell Berry poem.
Yeah,
But he does have one that's just
I
called
am.
The Vacation. And I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it's basically like about this guy who's just taking pictures the whole vacation and then
Mm.
realizes, what a great vacation. I was never actually on it.
Oh,
Like I was so busy
yeah. I
capturing it and like
that's
telling people I was on the vacation.
I think that's what your question is getting at is if you're not experiencing happiness, and this makes it sound consumptive a little bit, but why don't you just change your rhythm? Because that's really what vacation is supposed to do.
Yeah.
You're still probably eating food and being around people, or maybe it's just a change of rhythm for me in my experience.
Yeah, I think it's about presence, which is a thing I think so many people are paying attention to right now, is this mindfulness idea, like how to be in the moment that you're actually in. It's a thing I've been working so hard at. I've told you earlier, I am built so that I'm only happy about the things that happened in the past. So I would be that person who would come home from a vacation and be like, that was awesome. But if you ask me, like, what did it feel like on Thursday of that vacation? I'd be like, oh, didn't really enjoy it until I got home. And I've had those moments where, like, literally I did not enjoy a place I lived until it was in the rearview mirror. And I was like, oh, that was a great place I was.
Yeah.
Why didn't I like it when I was there? And so, and with the things I've been through, it's like so tempting for me to think all my happiness is behind me. And so I've been working super hard to, like, just sit still more often, to, like, if there's a bunch of ducks in the lake by me, I just try to pay attention to them and watch them play for a while, and just sit still more often.
And I think, well, like, this is one of the things that I wanted to mention in the message last week. I didn't really have time. Is the our capacity to will happiness, or to be present in the moment and experience it then, or even to in retrospect go back and recall that memory as a happy memory rather than a sad memory. In this TED Talk, I think it's Dan Gilbert. He's like a Harvard psychologist, and he talks about the dilemma between synthetic happiness and natural happiness. So natural happiness is when we get what we want, and then synthetic happiness is when you're happy with what you got, even though you didn't get what you originally wanted. And a lot of times we'll say, you'll hear you say, I didn't want that anyway, if you can't get what you want. And it kind of feels like a cop-out, but he uses this whole paradigm. I'm going somewhere. I'm going to be a little long-winded here. And he does this free choice paradigm that reveals the synthesis of happiness when we choose happiness. And so there's 6 participants. They're all lined up with 6 Monet prints, and they're told to rank those Monet prints in order of what they like. So they rank them all. This is my first favorite, second, third, fourth, so on. And then that day, right after they rank them, they're offered to take only the 3rd and the 4th print home. So then a week elapses, and they bring them all back, and they ask them to re-rank. And of course, every person moves number 3, the one that they went home with, to their number 2 most liked Monet print. And it shows how the synthesis of what you feel like you willed has a big impact on our happiness. And so there's a lot more control that we have over that, which for me, I'm hoping that anyone listening hears that as a tool, that it's not that we're products of circumstances. And this is a fun anecdote just to share from the TED Talk, is that this guy named Maurice Bickham was an exonerated inmate. He spent 37 years in Louisiana State Penitentiary. And after getting out, he says, I don't have 1 minute of regret. And then Jim Wright, this congressman who was disgraced because of a shady book deal, ended up saying afterwards, after he lost all of his power and influence, I'm much better off physically, financially, mentally, in almost every way. And then this other guy has the opportunity to invest in McDonald's, and he doesn't. He sees somebody else do it. They accrue a ton of wealth. And his response is, I believe it turned out for the best. And then lastly, you have this guy named Pete Best. Most people don't even know him, but he was the very first drummer of the Beatles. He ended up getting pushed out, and Ringo took over his spot. And afterwards, after all of the fame and success the Beatles have had, he was asked, how he felt about it. He says, I am happier than if I was still part of the Beatles. And most of us, when we hear that, we go, oh, yeah, whatever. Because what all those stories would tell us about happiness is that you should get a lot of wealth and lose it. You should spend as much time in prison as you can. You should make someone else rich, and you should never join the Beatles. Like, those are those really the things that make us happy? But it just goes to show the power of what our role in synthesizing happiness, and it doesn't make it any less, valuable for the human experience.
Yeah, I mean, I love that Jim Carrey quote. I think it's gold that he said about how everybody should have their dreams come true, so they know that does not bring them the thing that they imagined it
Yeah.
bringing. I think it's
Yeah.
such a freedom to think that. I think we all doubt it, you know, with the
Oh yeah.
Vax-A-Million.
Yeah.
I'm waiting every day for Mike DeWine to call me and be like, "Here's your $1 million," and then be like, "It does make you happy." What a
Yeah.
lie! We both then
Yeah.
say. Yeah, Tim is reminding us of the Tom Hanks is stuck. That there's the Terminal. Is there a trilogy to the Tom Hanks is stuck trilogy? There's Castaway, Terminal, Big. He's stuck
I've
in a
never
child's
saw
body.
Terminal. Oh yeah, big. So there's at least 3.
Yeah, there's got to be a third movie where he's stuck somewhere.
Gosh.
So I thought we could talk about. Have you? I think I've asked you this, but I thought we could just kind of finish our time by talking about what's making us happy,
Mm.
but not just do that, but to do what's called the why exercise, which you said you've never done that.
No, I don't think I have.
So it's a corporate brainstorming exercise, but it's also, I think, what just being a 5-year-old is. Because so like basically somebody says an answer to a question and you say why. And
Okay.
so it's like so you could do
So
it
it's
like at the
humiliating.
top floor of Procter and Gamble. They do this all the time, probably, but
Okay.
also children, I think, do it all the
Okay.
time. So
Yeah.
the idea of it is to like drill down, like, why does this matter? So if you're in a
Mm.
meeting and somebody says, well, this is really important, you just say why, and then you say
Yeah.
it maybe 3 or 4 times, like, why does this matter?
Mm.
So you go first. We'll each do one. Okay, we'll say why it's making us happy. We'll see if we can
Okay.
find
Yeah.
something
So
deep.
right now, this is so contradicting what I just said on Sunday, but hopefully
Perfect.
people hear the playfulness of it. Right now, my new iPhone 12 mini is making me really happy. And I
Okay.
feel like I should do some explaining to that, but maybe I should just wait for the why.
Yeah. Why does it make you happier than my iPhone
So
Max?
my last iPhone, which was a 7, I'm a slow adopter. Okay.
Okay.
And I don't like spending money on phones. The physical home button stopped working. You remember like that, those generations of
Yeah.
phones that had an actual home button. So then there's this thing where you can make a
Way
digital
back
home
in the
button
day.
way
Yeah.
back. Yeah. So there's this digital home button and it was awful. I think I used it for the last 2 months. Anytime I needed to click on my phone, it would take me about 3 extra clicks to do any function.
How dare it?
How dare
Our time is important.
uh,
All right. So do you have
yeah.
a deeper answer to like why that phone? Is there any deep reason why?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the real why is that I think I can experience better time management, or maybe just be quicker because I'm not spending so much time that was frustrating. I don't ever want to do 5 steps if it could be done in 1 step. And the camera is much better. So taking pictures of my family, that's a big bonus.
Okay.
All right.
Let's stick with that 5 steps is better than 1. Why does that matter to you?
Oh, you know this, Buff.
Come on, tell the secrets.
Enneagram 1. I got that perfectionist tendency that I'm never good enough, never efficient enough. So I tend to miss the whole cliche line that it's about the journey, not the destination. I'm always about the product, not the process.
Yeah.
Confession time.
Why?
That steals my happiness.
Why?
Really does.
One more time. Why?
Oh, okay. Is this a counseling session?
It is.
Well,
you owe me $150.
Yeah, a public counseling session. It's the worst kind. Yeah, that why it really comes from a sense of my self-worth is connected to not letting people down, and so I feel this deep desire to perform in a way that no one is ever disappointed.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. Okay. I got to turn this back around on you, Buff, and let's hope it gets as dark as mine just did.
No, I will say that is what made me happy that you pulled the happiness weekend, because I think my best messages are the ones where I don't do the thing very well. Like they're the ones where I'm like, Laura,
listen to this. Listen to what you're trying to tell everybody else.
Yeah. And so like when people are like, I really need to hear that, I'm like, man, not as much as I did.
Yeah.
think that's because it's the
Wow.
stuff where you know the nitty gritty, the dark of it, and so you're kind of imagining how people receive
Mhm.
it.
I think
If
teaching from a sense of depravity is more relatable anyway, and that's why it's more impactful for other people, you
yeah,
know?
I mean, I was taught that in seminary. Like, if you pay attention to a preacher, like their best messages are probably the thing that they
Wow.
struggle with the most. So it makes me always like, oh no, I hope
Wow.
nobody. We should never tell the church these things. We're revealing all kinds of secrets.
Okay, so
Um,
what makes Buff happy right now?
I mean, I have a list, but I think the top one, and this is not to do a plug of my podcast, but it is making me happy. Like, just Keaton and I sitting down and
Mm,
just having a conversation. I mean, I could say just any kind of conversation these days where people are just sitting down talking is making me happy. But that
mm.
particular one, it's just been a light the last few months of just sitting down and making that. That's my first
Yeah,
answer.
that's cool. I feel like you robbed me of the opportunity to ask you why, because you just went straight for it.
I know that's what I do. Uh,
So let
that's
me
my
let me
problem.
ask. Okay, so this will be our second why. Let's assume you
Okay.
already answered the first one. Yeah, why is sitting down and having that conversation with Keaton or with people in general? Why is that making you happy?
Yeah, I think it makes my brain work in a different way to listen.
Mm,
Um, and I like being surprised by the things somebody else might say. That's why I like that cups and question night too.
mhm,
Because like one of the things I did is getting ready for this weekend. I asked people what the most beautiful thing they've ever seen was,
mhm,
and I love like everybody gave these really surprising good answers. I think it saves me from thinking I have to have the answers
mm.
to listen to other people talk more than I talk, and
Because
so I
you
think
are good
that's
at
what I like.
talking.
Yeah, I can just talk and say stuff like that's my.
Yeah.
But I think I love the relief of letting other people teach me. So
Mhm.
Cammy's pointing out that America's Got Talent video where the woman had terminal cancer. Yeah, did you see this clip?
No.
It's a pretty great clip. I don't watch America's Got Talent, but I had some other people tell me I should watch it.
Yeah.
She has breast cancer that's metastatic, which is not a great diagnosis, especially for a young woman. It's what
Mm,
my sister had. And there's a point in the video where she says, "You can't wait until life isn't hard anymore before you decide to be happy."
mm.
And just
Yeah.
I, I can't imagine anything deeper than that has ever happened on America's Got Talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's why making that podcast is so fun to me right now, because I'm so relieved to make something, like to
Hmm.
be constructing, making something when
Yeah.
so much of life has been just waiting or stalling.
And I think for me, one of the more difficult things to digest coming into adulthood is that um, you start to realize that there's not as much. You wouldn't characterize a day as a good day or a bad day. You start developing this sense of maturity and understanding that those two things can exist at the same time. Like I was mentioning to you, kind of to bring this back to Jesus, is that I referenced the Hebrews 1:9 passage that he is anointed with the oil of gladness, but he's also referred to as the man of sorrows.
Yeah.
And he spends his whole point of his life. Like, imagine if you and I knew what our final destination would be. He actually did, and he was still able to live in those moments, and the sorrow or the sadness didn't cancel out his joy and his happiness. That us, coming into maturity is realizing that those two things can exist at the same time.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, your weekend and my weekend, this upcoming weekend about beauty, they're very connected. Like that idea of like, why is anything better than it has to be? Why is creation interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Why cicadas, but why also beauty? Like,
Yeah.
and I was telling you, like, when I think about the most beautiful things, they're also the most heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
They're the things I can barely say out loud,
Mm-hmm.
that have been crushing, but
Yeah.
also I hold the frame up a certain way, and they're the most beautiful things that I've
Yeah.
experienced.
I'm really looking forward to learning from you next weekend. I think when you mentioned that this talk, the Horatio Spafford song "It Is Well" came up, and we were talking about how he lost his wife and all four of his daughters His wife did survive, but he lost all 4 of his daughters in a shipwreck. And
Gosh.
I think he said, "Saved alone, what shall I do?" And when he went on a ship and crossed over the exact same wreck site, is when he wrote the song, "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it
Yeah.
is well with my soul." And I think that teaches me a lot about, like what you're saying, even in some of the hardest things can be the most beautiful.
Yeah. I can barely even hear you say those words. Like I told you, I used to, this is a confession, but I used to
I
sing.
was hoping you'd confess this.
Yeah. I used to sing at the church I grew up in with a big fluffy microphone to cassette tracks. And one of the things I've actually found a collection of, my mom would have it recorded every time I would sing. So I found it's a bad
That's
track to
awesome.
go down. uh,
That's awesome.
but it is well, it was like one of my greatest hits that I
Yeah.
sang several times
Yeah.
at the church. And it's so funny to like think about myself singing that as a high schooler.
Mm-hmm.
But it was true. Like it was so true to me then. Like it wasn't like I was without pain because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have I had painful things happen to me as a kid. So
Yeah.
I sang it, but I sang it in like
With
full kind
authenticity.
of faith that
Mm.
might be harder for me to tap into now.
Yeah. Like
It might
it
not be
wouldn't be
quite as
belting.
open-hearted. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
sing it, but my face might be like, "It is well."
As
Like, I'd
well.
put a
Is
little
it?
upspeak
Is
in
it?
it, like a little question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
so,
think that's a beautiful confession.
yeah.
In the
But
church.
there was something about vocalizing it too, I think
Mhm.
singing it, you have to decide it. I always hope that's true during our worship sessions when people are singing, that there's some
Yeah.
part of them going, do I mean this?"
Do I mean this?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be way too easy to. And I always felt like I was maybe singing hypocritically, but singing about really the faith that you want or the person you would like to be through the affirmation of Christ.
yeah.
Yeah, that it makes you have to think and feel.
Yeah, and sometimes it becomes true as you say it. I think it as well as a song like that if you
Hmm?
even if you start the song with a question mark on your face,
Yeah,
then you might get to the end of it and feel that peace
yeah.
like a river. So,
So for the takeaway, everyone needs to try and perform a solo of "It Is Well,"
yeah.
belt it out.
Yeah. I think that's where we're going with this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I do encourage people to think about what makes them happy, like to make that list. I talked about that thing about
Oh, I love
the
this.
Barbara Brown Taylor, and I've mentioned this several times in different spaces, but she has this thing where she says, make a list, two lists.
Hmm.
On one side of the paper, the notes app, you put things that make me feel more alive or things that bring happiness, things that fill my tank, things that make me feel more alive. And then on the other side, you say, here's why I'm not doing those things.
Mm,
Here's what's keeping me from that.
yeah,
I think if this pause in our world hasn't had us make those lists, even if it's just mentally, but I would say, man, physically, this week, like make that list. Here's what does make me happy, and here's why I don't do it that much. I think that we're talking about service and support. We all
yeah,
know that serving or jumping into men's and women's ministry like you did, like you talked about, or jumping into a service opportunity. We all know that signing up to serve in Americana or doing some of the City Lights events this year, doing Southbrook Serves, we know that
yeah.
it'll make us feel more alive. But there's something sometimes that just kind of
Hmm.
gets in our way. So
Yeah. Well
we
said.
want to lift up some prayers for Matthew, who's going to have a son any day now. And just know that we're happy with you
It's
about that
exciting.
and hoping that all the good things come
Yeah.
towards your family this
Matt
week.
is about to experience tremendous happiness and also tremendous sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
You can have both at the
Yeah.
same time, my friend.
And he's going to have to get ready to answer the question, why?
Oh, oh. It honestly, I think it'll answer it for you, that experience. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
I think, we've also had some people drop in on like why it's hard to feel joy. And I think that's why happiness is a helpful conversation, because
Yeah.
maybe that big, giant, permanent library feels intimidating.
Yeah.
but finding those moments of happiness to kind of like at least put some pages on the shelf. I know for me that has kept me alive this last year is like my dog being silly, or like going to the dog park or watching the ducks. Those little happiness moments have kind of walked me down that path towards joy. So hopefully that's something people can also kind of reach back in over this year. What's kept you going? We're really glad anybody who gives us time and attention for a while. We're glad. We hope that there's a hangover for you from thinking about what happiness really means and what it means to serve each other and lose ourselves for a while. So thanks for joining us. Whatever day you tune in to Weekend Hangover, and I think it'll be you and me next week too, right? Next
I
Monday.
hope so. This
we'll
was a
jump on.
blast.
We might do something. We might do something weird since it's the summer finale. We
Yes.
might get weird with it. So,
Okay.
thanks all for joining us. Have a good Monday.